chilling.
Not really.
I didn't bring you more.
Yeah, not really. Okay. 37, but it didn't feel like 37.
It did. Alright guys, hey, so glad to have you guys here. Especially considering that it's a humbling morning, so I appreciate you guys being here and doing this. Today we do have a special guest speaker for you guys, one of our own. Mr. Marcus is going to give us the word, and super excited for what God has put on his heart. So guys, I just want you guys to give his undivided attention, and let's see what he has to say for us today. All right.
Good morning, y'all. It's funny getting up here. I think the first and really only time I spoke to y'all in the context of speaking to y'all, right, when it wasn't just off the cuff, needing to make up for time, was like a year ago, right? So a lot has happened in that year, not just in my life, not just in your life, but around the world, right? But it's been really interesting. I think it's specifically interesting to see this group, right? Because there's a specific nucleus that exists here that I think we recognize, you know, as this has grown, we have had larger numbers, but I'm thinking about in real time, and this is not what I was thinking about talking about, but the way the church works, right? Preaching to the choir. This is the choir, if I can say so much, right? The people I think of all the time. The choir, the reason the preaching to the choir thing is wild because the choir is always at church, right? The choir is there. We've heard plenty of y'all talk about, you know, growing up being the ones that were always in church. Your parents drag you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and 6 times on Sunday, right? So there's something specific about getting the chance to talk to the ones that, as I always say, that choose to be here, right? On a morning where it's cold enough for you to decide, hey, if you wanted to, I woke up this morning and was like, if I wasn't speaking, I'd be going back to sleep, right? Not that I have obligations in my life, but I think about that specifically for y'all. Y'all have to come to school anyway, right? So there's a specific choice you're making to be here, and I appreciate y'all for doing that because it's exactly what I'm going to talk to y'all about. Right? So I'm just going to read y'all a bit of actually, let me sit down. I like to stand, yeah, but given the intimacy of this space, I'm fine sitting with y'all. I was having a conversation with ChatGPT last night. Right, yeah. But, no, specifically, thinking about what I would say here. When Coach Wilson texted me the other day and asked me if I wanted to speak, my immediate answer was yes, right? Because, I'm here every week, right? I pray with y'all every week. One way or the other, it's not anything new. And then it's literally what I set out to do with my life and what I've been called and prepared to do for the whole 25 years. So doing this is nothing new. So it's like, yeah, absolutely. But even within that context, through my mentors and the people I've learned from over the past few years, I learned specifically how to allow the Holy Spirit in, right? And not to force myself to have something to say, right? Anytime somebody asks me a question about speaking or showing up somewhere, and I start thinking, well, what am I going to be? Am I going to be able to? Kill that, right? And that's just the lesson. Kill that noise. That's the fear. That's the devil standing in, thinking that you will not make the decision to allow the Holy Spirit in. And now, hear me when I say that, because I'm kind of speaking off the cuff in this moment, but I'm hearing that. I was at a men's conference 2 weeks ago, and one of the things that they said specifically that stuck with me since is that weakness, right? I was talking about choosing hard things. That was just a week before I was there. Those moments of weakness where you feel doubt or shame or guilt or pain, whatever it might be, those human emotions that we all have, but are afraid to admit that we have, but we all have them, which is crazy. Those are your chances to let God in, right? Those are the chances for you to lean on God, to know that God exists. This morning I was thinking specifically about, again, the choice that I made in my life to follow the calling that I have, and what God has aligned for me in His will to do. One of the things I was thinking is I put my trust and my faith in God. But I was listening to somebody the other day, a guy named Myron Golden, he was talking about faith and doubt are both forms of belief. Right? We tend to think that if you don't have faith and you have doubt, then you don't believe. Now you don't. Non-belief is a form of belief. Right? Just like not making a choice is indeed a choice, but we tend to be able to not have to think about it, not be aware of what we're doing in our action, and we kind of get to shut it off to the side by not making a specific choice. Right? If you go without making a choice, you never have to take responsibility for it, but at some point you're going to run into a situation in which you got to take responsibility for it. So I was thinking specifically, I'm like, yeah, I put my faith in God, yes, but I don't know that there is faith without God. I don't know that literally Because there's belief without God, yes, but that belief is immediately doubt when it's not in God. So like that was something I was thinking about today. So that conversation I had with ChatGPT. Hear me when I'm saying this to y'all at y'all's age because I'm 25, right? My first time speaking at FCA in general I was 18, my senior year. I'm still very young, right? Some of y'all, I don't know if we have any seniors in here. I was just having a conversation with some seniors the other day, and it's so odd being in that peer gap, that peer group, but also the elder gap because of the experiences and the wisdom that I've taken and the people I've had a chance to learn. A big part of it being here every week, getting to learn from real human beings that are really doing the work right ahead. They talk about learning forward and teaching backward. That's what I'm living my life trying to do. So when I hear Coach Miller and Coach Starkey get up here, and I'm like, Coach Stone last week, and then that specifically to see a grown man be willing to stand in front of y'all and shed tears. I don't know much else that makes it a human being, right? And then specifically, I don't know him outside of that moment that he was in here. Given that interaction, that's the follower of Christ. That's the man I want to see what his story is like, what his life looks like, what the way he makes certain decisions tells me a lot about more than just him. It tells me about myself, it tells me about the world in which I live in, and then the individual I claim to be a disciple. Because if we're doing that, I think about that, right? Social media giving you the chance to compare, well, we're comparing the wrong thing. Right? That's another part of it. Let me just read this. So I said, I think what the adults don't understand is that the kids don't know any better. So if the adults don't know any better, nobody knows it. Chat said exactly. That line nails something deep. If the kids don't know any better, it means the adults didn't teach any better, which means nobody actually knows any better. They're just pretending. The cycle keeps looping. Each generation, assuming the last one had it figured out when they were just winging it too. I said, but the kids don't know that until they're adults, if then, and by then the kids already don't know anything. I said, right, that's the trap. By the time you realize nobody knew any better, you've already become the nobody the next generation will look to for answers you're still figuring out. It's a cycle of delayed awareness, ignorance inherited as wisdom. Right, so what does the Bible say? Ecclesiastes hits that right on the head. Solomon basically says nobody really knows anything for sure. He said that which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. That's Ecclesiastes 1:9. My pastor, senior pastor at the Potter's House, Troy Roberts, always goes into the Hebrew and Greek translation of words, of like operative words in Scripture. So since that, because I love language. I love semantics, I love all of that. So I've been doing so myself when I read Scripture, but that's also why I got this, which I think is really cool. It's the Jesus-centered Bible. So I think actually I got this last year, around the same time that I first started hanging out with y'all, because y'all have the Athlete's Bible, right? Which I think is so cool the way it's speaking your language, right? I didn't think about that. Talk about the love language. Y'all ever heard love languages? People talk about it, if you speak one love language and this person, it's like speaking two different literal languages. That's kind of the same thing, right? That's y'all's language. That's the language you speak as Christian athletes. So it makes sense to translate that into a playbook. Well, as a follower of Christ, as an individual who said, I want to be like Jesus, it made a whole lot of sense for me to get the Jesus-centered Bible, right? But this one specifically kind of paints him like an action hero. It's like, it shows the very specific ways in which Jesus was the one to follow. So that Hebrew of nothing new, that word new doesn't mean brand new. It means remix, right? Tried again. The definition of the word innovation, technology to change things, is just to bridge a gap between what was and what is, or what will be, what you're bringing into the future, the vision you have. So I think about that. And this is I say all the time, curiosity at y'all's age, at anybody's age, most people who do bad things, like evil is a byproduct of ignorance. In Thomas Paine's book, Common Sense, when they founded the country, that's one thing he says. Like, why this country was founded was because the evil, the tyranny that was going on in Great Britain, but how much of it was because the king was so far removed from the people, not knowing what was going on. Right? So the ignorance allowed them to do evil. Almost what I was saying before, right? The non-making a choice, the doubt and faith. If you can ignore and pretend that you're not aware of something, you can not be aware of it until you have to be made aware of it. But if you keep kicking the can down the road, at some point you just never have to address it. Y'all, in general, people make decisions based off their curiosity, right? We're talking about intelligence. Your desire to know more, to see more, to asking a question, right? What will come, what will happen, how often, most dares are, I bet you won't. It's like, I bet you won't. It's literally a question. It's more a question than it is a dare. I bet you won't do it. And then you're thinking, well, they think I won't, will I? So the very act of attempting to do so is to see whether or not you would do it, or whether you are capable and willing of doing such a thing that you would never have thought of doing on your own, all right? That one piece is probably the difference in where curiosity and like conviction or like following Christ comes in, because there is nothing new under the sun, right? Everything that we should be doing has been done. And more than just here, right? Our lives is our lives. So people before us, that's why I think what I took a note of earlier was Meditations. That's a book that I've been in and out of by Marcus Aurelius. One of the most interesting things in that book is him saying, yo, I don't want to get out of bed some morning. Right? This is the ruler of the Roman Empire. This the man that was the big boss dog. You talk about Marcus Aurelius, everybody, yeah, the man didn't want to get out of bed half the time. And so, okay, let me continue, because here's why. Same reason Jesus wept. I was watching the movie Barbershop not too long ago with Ice Cube. And like, it's so crazy how different forms of media get people's lives, people who are living in a certain way, whether you agree with certain things or not, who are living in a certain way, learning certain things, asking certain questions, can't help but get certain answers. And then they can't help but allow their lives to show those answers. So in the movie, his grandmother asked him, do you know why Jesus wept? Well, at the end of the movie, he now knows why Jesus wept. Right? He goes, this trial, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it goes like the course of a week. Which is interesting to think about, like his movie Friday, all of the nonsense that happened in that movie, and the point is that's just one day in his life. One day in the world in that space. Okay, I'll finish reading this, right? Solomon also says, for in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. That's Ecclesiastes 1:18. I'll read both of them from the Jesus Center Bible, just because they shift it a little differently, and I think the perspective gives that even more specific. That 1:9, right? History merely repeats itself. It has all been done before. Nothing new under the sun is truly new. Because really that's interesting. If you've ever heard people say history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. Thinking about today being rhyme day, even within that, history does not repeat itself. The same thing doesn't happen, but it's also not a new thing to come. And that is the thing, how often we think that we're experiencing something new that nobody's seen before. No, you are somebody new that we've never seen before, experienced the thing that's been experienced before, right? So that's the point of community, that's the point of conversation, that's the point of learning, of seeking the kingdom, right? When I talk about y'all are doing real kingdom work here, it goes beyond just being here. It goes to what y'all take from here, whatever you're going through in your day-to-day that you interpret and then take back out into the world and then bring back. And then it's like a science experiment, right? You keep mixing stuff up until you get what you're looking for. And if you never get what you're looking for, you keep experimenting. So yeah, that last line, Luke 23:34, where Jesus says, on the way to the cross, Father, forgive them for they do not know what they do. I wasn't sure if this would say anything different, but it does. And I specifically was wondering because that's the one line, I always think that's odd. In here it says, Father, forgive them for they don't know what they are doing. What they were doing was creating the world in which we live. What they were doing was robbing us of our knowledge of self. What they were doing was robbing us of the very representation of the God that created us in his image to have the ability to go and create more upon the earth. I was looking at young people in the Bible, stories of young people in the Bible who did great things, because we talk about history, so many people who did do great things were extremely young. They were in their 20s, some in their teens. I think specifically about my journey so far to be here right now, right? To be here. I can look, they say the unexamined life is not worth living. I believe my life is worth living specifically because I've examined it. Right? I know that if my life and my story is the only, I don't want to go there. Thank you for being here. Yeah, my life is the only Bible that anybody ever reads. Now here's the thing. What I've been saying recently, it's not easy to set the standard while setting the standard. Right? Trying to find myself at 25 while also trying to show y'all what's possible, what can be. Yeah. Only reason I know what I would even, it's the image that God's put into my head. Okay, well, what is possible? What can you be? What does it mean to follow and live the questions and live in a certain way that you get to show? Because again, my first time speaking at FCA I was 18. 18 years old. I promise you, I was not a Bible scholar. I still am not a Bible scholar. Like, that's the thing that I often, I'm worried. I'm like, man, that's gonna be the thing they call me out on. Because I don't know scripture like it's the back of my hand. Which is crazy because I actually know it well enough. Like, more than well enough to be 25 and still learning it. But at the same time, that shame and guilt is what allowed me to go, okay, well, you know what, let me get in it. Because there's a reason you feel that. Whether it's true or not, it's a belief. So, yeah, I think I was about to wrap up and say, specifically, yeah, what they know not what they're doing. When it comes to y'all, I want you to hear something very specific. Your life is made up of your choices. It is hard to tell y'all that at this age, knowing that you're still going to make dumb choices. That you're still going to make, and dumb choices, you're going to make choices that will be choices. You're still young. I can't say whether or not this is the right or wrong choice for you, only you can. But you know that based off the choices you've made and how they've served you before, right? We end up so often in position, this is where I want to be right. I would not want to be anywhere else because I'm literally doing the very, I'm doing the thing. I tweeted 3 years ago, we gonna reach the kids. That's what all week I've been thinking. And like just the different confirmations and the things that have been over these past few weeks. But every day of my life, when I actually look at it, like, yeah, no, it's never been out of lockstep, even when I was. Even when I thought, or wasn't aware. There's a difference between thinking he's not there and not even being aware of his presence. I can't say that this is going to be the space. I think it is, because it's a curation here. Y'all choosing it is something specific, right? We want to show up for y'all in a certain way because of this. Because I think we know, this is a different day and age, and we have enough information and access to people to be able to say, oh, this is how people live here, 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 and here. The world ain't what it's supposed to be. We may not have known that 20 years ago. We know that today. But we also now know, that combined with this, our knowledge of the world, combined with our knowledge of the word, it's game over as it was always supposed to be, as I think. So I'm saying, like, y'all, I hesitate for a second to challenge y'all at this age to do certain things. But again, when I'm in the classroom and thinking, 7 years ago, I was just them. 10 years ago, I was just them. Right? I've chosen to be who I am. I've taken responsibility for it. Nobody gets to tell Marcus, and that's the thing. You can call it ego sometimes, but nobody gets to tell Marcus who Marcus is, because Marcus knows who Marcus is. And I get to walk that out for the rest of my life. That's really my challenge to y'all. It don't have nothing to do with anybody else. My challenge to y'all, as I always say, go find who you are, be that, and be that with all impunity. The song that we've been singing at church, all authority. Right? Have dominion, be fruitful, multiply, subdue the earth. That is created in God's image to go out and be fishers of men. But it starts with you. It starts with others. It starts with learning, looking, seeking, finding, being curious, and having discernment, which you only get through trials and tribulations over time. That's where you get testimony from. And then that's where all of y'all got a testimony already. Literally, your life is a testimony. Let it continue to be. I promise. Great things unfold, and I'm still finding it out myself. Yeah, I think that's all. That's how I normally wrap up. I just know whenever I literally can't say more words, that's my job.
Yeah, guys, I just want to kind of hit back on what Mark was talking about, man. It's like, yeah, your choices all impact your life. They all, both good and bad choices. You know, in terms of us growing as Christians, it's not just a straight, smooth line from one point to Christianity or to our faith growing, right? It's like the old adage, you know, it's like, you want to make God laugh, make a plan, right? Because we may think we know better, we may think that we have the answers, but we make choices and things and they don't go the way we want them to. And it's not to say that, you know, it's not what God has in store for you, but it's to realize that, hey, you need God in your life, and sometimes God has things fall apart on purpose so that you realize that you can't do this on your own, and nor are you supposed to. Sometimes the struggles happen because that's where we're stretched. Because if you always know, like, your mom and dad are always going to take care of your messes and do stuff like that, you're never going to become a young man, young woman that you're supposed to be a functioning adult, right? And that's what God does for us sometimes. He puts us in moments to where